Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's jump right in. Today we are taking a really fascinating, structured look into the intellectual property ecosystem of Fadi Ghali. Now, if you've been tracking the bleeding edge of brainwave audio engineering or governed AI architecture, you've probably seen fragments of his work floating around platforms like the Open Science Framework or GitHub, but today we're zooming out. We are going to connect the dots and map out exactly how a deeply technical journey evolved into this massive, overarching architecture that's literally designed to reclaim human focus. It's a pretty complex topic, I won't lie, but we're going to break it down visually, step by step.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. A lifetime of two worlds. 2. The tariff shock catalyst. 3. The Dolby of Human Feeling. 4. AI persona as a software. And finally 5. The MasterMindGenesis umbrella.
Okay, starting off with Section 1. A lifetime of two worlds.
To truly grasp the architecture Ghali has built, we kind of have to take a step back and marvel at the wild contrast in his background. It's absolutely foundational to how he sees the world. On one hand, you have media and storytelling. Ghali has lived a very public life. He's a national TV presenter and anchor in Egypt, a certified media mentor, and someone who's literally shaped narratives for millions of viewers, artists, and even presidents. But then, on the flip side, you have technology and product. He was writing his very first lines of code way back in 1986 on an old 8088 XT machine. He's been a system administrator, a security professional, a full-stack product manager. He's pointed out that this early exposure to computing completely wired his brain to see the world purely as systems, frequencies, and edge cases. So you've got this deep empathy for human narrative mashed up with rigorous systems engineering. That duality sets the stage for everything he builds later.
Moving on to Section 2. The tariff shock catalyst. Now, his pivot into this current technological ecosystem, it wasn't some slow, gradual shift. It was actually forced by a sudden, massive real-world roadblock. Let's look at the timeline. We start in 1986 with those first lines of code. Fast forward to 2024, and Ghali launches VitalSway, which was an eco-wellness e-commerce brand. Things are moving along, but then, boom, April 2025. Sudden new US-China tariffs announced by Donald Trump hit his supply chain and just completely upend his pricing model overnight. It was an economic shock that forced a total, immediate halt to his e-commerce business.
And having your business abruptly halted like that forces a pretty brutal question. For Ghali, it was, what is the highest leverage problem only I can solve? He realized he couldn't keep relying on these fragile external supply chains. He needed to look inward and build something that actually leveraged his unique blend of media storytelling and hardcore systems engineering.
So the crazy part is the answer actually came from his own daily struggle. The core problem he zeroed in on was the absolute fight to focus in what he calls a frequency-polluted environment. I mean, we are all constantly bombarded by digital noise, right? During his research to solve his own attention deficit, he stumbled across gamma brainwave entrainment CDs. The promise of using frequencies to literally lock in human focus was huge to him, but he looked at the existing tech and found it to be incredibly primitive. It just wasn't good enough. So he decided to build something radically better himself.
Which brings us to Section 3. The Dolby of Human Feeling.
This is where we cross over from the abstract idea of frequency pollution to a very tangible, real-world technological solution. Meet MindAmpFX. This is an AI-assisted, frequency-aware engine. In fact, Ghali literally refers to it as the Dolby of Human Feeling, because instead of just, making audio sound louder or a bit clearer, this engine is designed to classify and enhance music directly by brain state, emotional resonance, and the actual cognitive demand placed on the listener. It's an incredibly analytical approach to audio, essentially attempting to weaponize sound for extreme focus.
So how does it actually work under the hood? Well, MindAmpFX specifically targets gamma brainwave entrainment. For context, that's the brain state associated with high-level cognitive processing and absolute peak concentration. It's constantly evaluating the emotional resonance and dynamically calibrating the cognitive demand of the audio. And look, this isn't just theoretical whiteboard stuff. The framework and the claims for this engine have been formally documented and validated through his Broadcast Entry Edition whitepaper, which is publicly registered on platforms like Zenodo.
All right, let's look at Section 4, AI persona as a software.
So while he's trying to build out these advanced frequency tools, Ghali hits yet another wall. He found that standard, generic AI chatbots just offer loose conversations. They have completely unguided parameters, and they really lack any sort of surgical insight. You ask a question, you get a different answer every time. And Ghali realized that when you need precise, repeatable insight for scientific engineering, those loose conversations are totally useless. So
What did he do? He built Persona as a Software, or PaaS. In this model, AI personas aren't just chat buddies, they are treated as governed, strictly structured software products. They are engineered from the ground up to be highly repeatable and incredibly precise.
And to prove this architecture actually works in the wild, he released community evidence. He put out these specific AI starter kits, Icerny, Eva, and Stark, all at version 1.0. Icerny, for example, is super interesting. It was used as a cross-platform forensic case study across the big 5 AIs. The goal? To prove that his Persona as a software framework could maintain its strict parameters regardless of which underlying language model it was running on. Eva and Stark act as community plug-and-play starter kits. So he didn't just theorize it, he built the evidence, documented it, and put it out there.
But you're probably wondering, how does he actually govern these AI personas so strictly? Like, what's the mechanism? The secret is HFML, Human Frequency Markup Language. This is the foundational programming architecture that Ghali built totally from scratch. It is the core coding layer that takes a generic floating AI brain and literally forces it into a strict, governed framework. It allows him to construct what he calls synthetic souls. It is a massive leap from your standard everyday AI prompting to actual structural AI governance.
Finally, let's pull it all together in Section 5, the MasterMindGenesis umbrella.
So how do all these wildly disparate pieces, the media and narrative stuff, the gamma brainwave audio, the governed AI software, how do they actually fit together into one cohesive ecosystem? Well, they all live within the MasterMindGenesis portfolio. This is the massive overarching framework that legally and conceptually ties all of his scientific inventions together. It includes the Golf Law, which stands for the Ghali Universal Law of Frequency. It includes isotruth, silent human resonance, aura shield, and tunable reality. Every single one of these is a trademark subcomponent and framework. And what's really incredible here is that this entire suite is officially timestamped and registered as a public archive on the Open Science Framework, so it's there for legal defensibility and scholarly citation. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the final culmination of all his work, the ultimate mission for Fadi Ghali, both as the founder of /Turbo Limited and in his current role as an anchor at Al Kahira News. It's to take this entire lifetime of media, tech, and frequency thinking and turn it into investable, real-world systems. Every single line of code, every broadcast, every complex AI architecture, it's all aimed at one singular goal: helping us humans reclaim our attention and our emotional balance in an increasingly noisy world.
Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on. As these frontier technologies increasingly merge with human focus, are governed AI personas and frequency-aware audio engines going to become the new standard blueprint for reclaiming our attention? It is a truly fascinating look at the future of cognitive enhancement. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep your focus sharp.